Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robert Sines with the Texas Examiner and my co-host, John Tipton.
You almost forgot my name, didn't you? Hey, folks, how are y'all doing today? Today is, I think today is the 26th of May.
April.
Of April 2024.
Yes.
And it's when we're recording this. And we're going to try to get this out to you guys as soon as possible.
And the reason is, in a few days, there's a possibility that they're going to retry a rancher in Arizona that was, they just had a mistrial in Arizona. This rancher was arrested and being charged for homicide, killing a suspected illegal alien on his ranch. And the rancher, his testimony is that he didn't shoot at anybody. You know, he had people on his ranch, and he's had people there multiple times. Right. And that particular day, there was shots fired earlier, and then he saw a man with a weapon, and he's 75 years old, John, right. And his wife's 75 years old. And then later on in the afternoon, he fires some warning shots, and calls Border Patrol. He's being upfront about this.
Sure.
And then I guess they found a body on his property, and a body with, and we'll hear right now from an expert,
right.
forensic expert, but a body they couldn't find the round.
So just a body with a hole.
A body with a hole, and on his property. Well, they arrest this man, and they also detain his wife. And the sad thing is that they have expended almost all their resources in defending themselves. And today, we're very fortunate to have a subject matter expert that's been very involved in that case. And so I'm glad to, yes.
Well, I just want to make sure the folks know before they decide whether or not they want to continue watching the show, why this is important to them.
Well, it's important because one is, it appears to be political instead of law enforcement being, justice being blind.
Right.
We have a sheriff and a district attorney in that county that are running for the re-election. They are this year. They seem to be, based on video that I've watched and statements that they've made. They seem to be very friendly towards migrants. And they made
and these are our neighbors to the west in Arizona. Most Texans would consider Arizonans to be similar to Texans.
Yes.
In their rights and responsibilities and citizenry.
Absolutely. Yeah. But this sheriff and district attorney appear to are making this case political, or one is left to assume that.
Right.
And that concerns me, John, because whether you're in a red county or a blue county, if you go before the prosecutor or the sheriff, you should be treated equally. Justice should be fair to everybody.
Absolutely.
And in this case, is concerning. Fortunately, it appears that out of the 8 jurors, is there 7, I guess, voted to acquit him, and 1 was a holdout, and that's what caused the mistrial.
Okay.
But the prosecutor is still considering retrying this case. And that's why we want to put this show out there as soon as possible, because if they do decide to retry this case, it'll be on Monday, about 3 days from today.
Oh, you put me on the spot. I'm going to do my best to get this
John is our producer.
Get this out on Monday morning.
Yes, we'll pay you overtime, John.
Some more licky chewies.
Well, but seriously, and fortunately, we have the subject matter expert.
Yes,
that was on this case. He's a forensic expert and consultant. And I'm very proud to call him our friend, and also proud to say that he lives here in Kendall County. And so we want to welcome today to the studio Dr. Ron Martinelli of Martinelli and Associates. Welcome.
Well, hi, guys. How are you? And I appreciate the opportunity to come here today and have this platform to discuss the true story behind the investigation and the trial of Arizona rancher George Allen Kelly.
Thank you, Doc. But before we get into the case, I'd like for those the few out there that don't know you, Doc, tell us a little bit about Ron Martinelli and Associates and what your team does.
Great. Well, Martinelli and Associates, Justice and Forensic Consultants, is the only multidisciplinary forensic death investigations team in the nation.
The only one?
The only one in the nation.
Wow.
Okay, so you have law enforcement agencies, Department of Justice, FBI, all these different agencies. We can do everything that the FBI can do. So we have our own labs. We have 26 different law enforcement, medical, and forensic experts. We do all things forensics except for DNA, because just don't want to spend millions of dollars on a DNA lab, right?
Sure.
But we have our own medical team, have our own forensic pathologists, toxicologists, orthopedic physicians. We have blood spatter experts, ballistic scientists, firearms experts, got our own drone pilot, photogrammetrist. I mean, you name it. In construction, we do airlines, we do boats, we do cars.
That's fantastic, Doc.
I mean, you think about it, and that's what we do. But you know, the forensic death investigations team is the heart and soul of Martinelli and Associates.
Fantastic. Doc, so how did you get involved in this George Allen Kelly case, the rancher in Arizona that's being tried?
Well, sure. A couple of our law enforcement contacts got a hold of me personally because they know we do these that's what we specialize, complex, high-profile homicide cases with a forensic need.
Right.
And I got a call one day, and they said, "Hey, Doc, have you heard about this case out in Arizona?" And to be honest with you, I hadn't heard about it. And so they sent me some links to some news stories, and they said, "Hey, there's something wrong going on here down in Santa Cruz County, Nogales, Arizona, which is a border county." And they said, "Why don't you just take a look at this, and if there's anything that you can do to help this man and his wife, you know, here's who the attorney is in the case." At the time, there was a different attorney team. So I took a look at it. I showed it to a couple other of our guys, and we said, "You know what? This is worthwhile making a call." And so I subsequently called the attorney at the time, Brenna Larkin, out of Nogales, and talked about who I was. And I said, "Why don't you go ahead and Google us? We're pretty easily Googled. And then if you think, we'd like to help you, if you think that we could help you, go ahead." And son of a gun, we got a call. And before you knew it, I was picking out forensic experts.
Right. And so you went there, you met Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, I met everybody. I met Mr. and Mrs. Kelly. They live on a 180-acre ranch outside of Nogales in an area called Keno Springs. And when we're talking about on the border, he's literally on the border. So you can see the Trump and Biden border walls right out the living room window.
Wow.
But here's the thing that I want people to understand, because I'm a rancher. Okay, Robert, I know you're a rancher.
So is John.
And John, and I'm a stock contractor as well. Okay, got bucking bulls. So, and he's got cattle. And so we all understand what it's like living out here in Kendall County, living on a ranch. He's isolated, right? So he's out there outside of Keno Springs and outside of Nogales. And it's just him and his wife. That's it.
Right.
And so when you get out there, it's a very interesting looking ranch because it's pretty desolate, but it also has a beauty to it.
Right.
But what I want people to understand for the context of this entire incident and the investigation and prosecution is just imagine, after talking with Mr. and Mrs. Kelly many times and being out there many times, think about what it would be like, especially you live on a ranch, you live in a city, and you've got, as a frequent occurrence, strange men trespassing on your property, dressed in camouflage clothing, carpet boots, and Robert, you were in Border Patrol, you know what carpet boots are, and wearing gloves, and carrying AK-47s
Radios.
and giant backpacks, radios, day and night on your property.
John, how would you feel about that in your ranch? People coming through at night.
It's so hard for me to even imagine.
Exactly, right? Wrap your head around that.
I'd rather be judged by.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say. I know exactly.
Absolutely.
So, Doc.
So, I get it. Okay, I get it. I work for the United States Department of Justice. I've been an expert for the Texas Attorney General's office, 9 different state attorneys, many municipalities. But because of the work that I do, which some of the work I do is a little bit high-risk work, I have cameras all over my property on my ranch. Okay, and we monitor all the time. It's kind of a strange world, but my wife is former law enforcement,
Yes.
LAPD. You met her.
Yes.
She's a tough cookie,
Yes.
and then me, and we think about these things.
Yes.
We really do. So anyway, that's the context. So when when you think about decisions being made, how ranchers look at certain things, especially their personal security, these are not people living in the city,
Right.
where you can hear your neighbor's toilet flush next door. You call 911 and 911 is there.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's not what you have here.
Gotcha. Well, you painted a good picture of it. Now, so tell us the day that this happened. Can you walk us through the incident from the beginning, Doc,
Sure.
to when they actually arrested Mr. Kelly and his wife?
Sure. So this happened in January 30th last year, 2023. It was a beautiful day, cloudless day, and wintertime. And Mr. Kelly was in his kitchen, and he was making a sandwich. His wife, Wanda, who's very hard of hearing, almost deaf, she's in the living room, and all of a sudden she says, "Alan, I see men on our property, and you got to take a look at this. They got camouflage clothes. I see a couple of people with guns." And so, of course, Alan is going, what the heck? And he moves from the kitchen right away, and he's moving into the living room where they have these large windows on the east side of the house. And he hears a shot. Now, she doesn't hear it because she's deaf, but he hears the shot, and he tells her, "Get down, be quiet, get into the kitchen, and call the ranch liaison from Customs and Border Patrol." So what people need to know, and Robert, you know this, John, for the ranchers on the Border Patrol has established all across the country,
Right.
our southern border, we have it in Texas, something called the Ranch Liaison Prop.
Correct.
Okay. And this is a personal agent from Border Patrol that works with ranch families.
Right.
And they are the first line of defense, the first line of communication, right? So that's who you call, because they're going to get there by and large before the sheriff's office does. Okay. And so there is a card taped to the refrigerator. Okay, I've seen it. I took a picture of it.
Right.
So she grabs the cell phone and she calls the ranch liaison officer, says, "Hey, this is going on. This is going on." By this time, Alan has moved into the hallway on the east side of the house, and he has a gun. He's got a rifle. He's got an AK-47, as a matter of fact, right against the door. Why would he have that? Because he's been shot at not once, but twice by suspected cartel drug smugglers. He's never returned fire. This is important that people understand.
This man's never been in trouble with the law, right?
Oh, no, 100%.
75 years.
This guy has got a history that's the most amazing history you've ever heard.
Gotcha.
You saw the series Lonesome Dove?
Yes.
He's the man that gave the CBS president the idea to produce Lonesome Dove. He's the man that did that when he was up in Montana. Anyway, so Alan's been shot at twice. And I asked him, I said, "Have you ever fired back at these people?" And he goes, "Are you nuts?" He goes, I start a war with the cartel. We're out here by ourselves. We're in our 70s. They'll come in here. They'll slaughter us. They'll kill our livestock. They'll burn our house down, and nobody'd even be the wiser before they got back. Anytime they want.
Ever move back in there?
Right. Exactly. Right. So, but he says, the first time they fired at me, I didn't have a gun. Sure. I got armed up afterwards. He goes, the second time they fired at me, which was a few months before this incident, he goes, I didn't fire back. I was with my dogs. I got down real low, but I fired a bunch of warning shots up into the air, and they skedaddled. So that's his mentality. If I have to protect myself, I'm going to fire, let them know that I'm armed, and then, they'll run. So that was the setting.
Did he have any military training background?
No. But this is a guy that,
largely just a hunter.
Believe me, this is a guy from Montana. He's the real deal. He's a cowboy from Montana. He's a phenomenal fly fisherman. He's a retired wildlife biologist up in Montana. Said he built an Orvis fly fishing lodge up in Montana, and then he and his wife had enough of the cold, so they decided to move to Arizona, and they found themselves, on on this ranch. But anyway, just to continue, so he grabs his gun, and he's got a big metal door. So you can imagine he's got metal security doors on his property, right in his house. And so he deliberately slams this metal door to make some noise to maybe see if that's going to scare him out. Kind of de-escalation, right?
Sure.
Let's scare them, see what they
He's not
do.
a guy who's looking for trouble.
No, and he's a very smart man.
Yes.
He's been a rancher his whole life. He understands the deal here.
Right.
And so he said when he slammed that door, they were moving south. Now the border is directly south. So we're facing east, but the border is south.
Mm-hmm.
So they start to move parallel. But when he slammed the door, one of the guys that were armed with an AK-47, or at least a long rifle, turned around and pointed that gun in his direction.
Okay.
Okay, so now he's seeing this.
Right.
What am I going to do? Fight or flee or whatever?
So there was eye contact.
Well, from a distance, right? He, there's no real eye
But
contact.
there
He was
was
able to
awareness.
describe him.
There
Oh,
was awareness.
absolutely.
Okay.
He was able to describe this individual.
Okay.
And then he said that he turned in a southeasterly direction and fired way up into the air. Okay. He describes it shooting, over their heads, but he's actually in a southeast direction. They're east of him and moving. So then he immediately, and then they skedaddle.
Mm-hmm.
And
They skedaddle south to
they skedaddled south. And there was a wash, there's an arroyo.
Right.
It's the same thing. All right. And he said they popped down into that arroyo and he lost sight of them. But he's got a big metal building about a quarter of a mile away, a General Steel building. And he's got property and all sorts of stuff down there. He just wanted to make sure that they were going and going off his property. So all he did is he walked over to the road. The false narrative from the prosecutor is he chased him. The man can't hardly walk.
75 years old.
Okay, he can hardly walk. And he's hunched over when he walks. So this man's not chasing anybody.
Right.
And he was down there. Border Patrol comes up. They were already in the area. Long story short, Border Patrol shows up with a few agents. Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office shows up with at least 4 people. I think total there was about 8 people on the property. Alan had his gun, had his dogs with him, extremely cooperative. They wanted to make sure he was okay. And then he, where did this happen? He goes, let me show you. They searched this entire area, didn't find any people, didn't find any weapons, didn't find any backpacks.
Shots, right?
He did. He
That's
absolutely
what I
did.
wanted to clarify is that you're saying, okay, so we're looking east out the window. The suspects, illegal aliens, are headed due south. And when he fired his warning shot, he fired it at least a 45-degree angle.
Oh, higher than that.
To
Yeah.
the southeast.
Right,
in
to the
direction of
southeast. To the southeast.
So clearly, and it could have been, or should have been observable by the aggressor. We'll call him the aggressor, right? The aggressor, that he was clearly not aiming at him. Is that kind of what we're getting at?
Yeah, and it's important to know that his wife was paying attention to what Alan said, so she's down low. She hears those shots.
Right.
And she testifies, to that. I heard those shots.
What time is this, Doc?
At this 2:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, so it's
But,
daytime.
imagine what it's like to be Wanda Kelly at this point, because she knew already they had shot at her husband before on 2 prior occasions. And she's down low. She hears all these rounds going off. She doesn't know whether it's Alan's gun or their gun. She said, when I got back up to see where Alan was, she goes, I just was praying to God I wasn't going to see his body on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? So they search around and they clear the property. If you see anything else, give us a call. Now, John, you brought up something that I want to clarify, because that's another false narrative put out by the prosecution and the media, that he never told law enforcement that he fired. He absolutely told law enforcement that he fired. We introduced the 911 tapes. We introduced the transcripts, and we brought in the dispatchers who admitted, the CBP dispatchers admitted that they screwed up when they were reporting what he said. They screwed up when they radioed to their agents in the field. Okay, so that's their screw up. And what you're going to see here from the very beginning, the theme that presents itself is it was just one negligent screw up after another, one after another, after another, after another, through this entire investigation.
Okay, so the arresting agency is the sheriff's department, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then how is a mistranslation, whether intentional or not, by the CBP, how does that affect the subsequent arrest?
That's a great question. In my line of work, police practices, forensics and stuff, we talk about the collective knowledge of the officers, right? Your education, your training experience, and what do you learn about the incident, right? What do you learn about that? And so the miscommunication affected the collective knowledge of the sheriff's department and even some of the CBP people.
So there's
Right.
an element of bias that just got put out there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So the forensic facts support Mr. Kelly and Mrs. Kelly. There's no getting around it. The state had a hell of a time with that.
Right.
You can't get around it. But let me share something with your viewers and listeners. So the forensic experts like me that are also homicide experts, we practice what is referred to as reconciliation. Okay, so every event like this has 5 components: circumstances, information, statements, facts, and forensic evidence. And the job of the forensic investigator, just like a detective, we're a little higher grade than they are because we use applied science and things like that. But every detective should be schooled in reconciliation because everybody gives you a statement, right? We call that a representation, right? So the CBP, they give you statements of what they do. They do it verbally. They do it in their police reports. The sheriff's people, they do all of that. Mr. Kelly gives a statement. Mrs. Kelly gives a statement. But those are just statements, right? And you don't make credibility determinations at that time. What you do, what you're supposed to do, and what never happened here, repeatedly never happened, is they never reconciled the statements against the other 4 components.
It's made assumptions, right?
They just made assumptions from the very get-go.
So their link analysis at the very get-go is just blown to...
Absolutely. And I actually wrote a very popular article about this called you can look it up on the internet. It's called The Investigation of Homicide, where self-defense is asserted. And it talks about these different mistakes that investigators can do. So when you make a faulty determination of credibility or, criminality based on nothing but confirmation bias, right? Then if you're inexperienced or you are biased, all you do is you keep excluding everything that's exculpatory or innocent.
Right.
You just exclude all of that, and you just keep circle the wagons, and you just keep building, trying to find evidence that you can manipulate to fit to say, hey, I'm right.
Right.
Okay. But it's like a house of cards, and if you can establish in a defense strategy, which we did, that your initial information was faulty, you had confirmation bias, and all of this other stuff was misrepresentation. I believe some of them were outright lies by the lead detective, Jorge Anza. He had to concede that what he put in his affidavit of probable cause and what he wrote in 4 search warrants was not correct, was a complete misstatement by Mr. Kelly to bolster his probable cause affidavit to arrest him and also to bolster the search warrant. It takes, we just get so angry when we see that.
Yeah, but again, so we're keeping the public in suspense here. He was arrested because they found a body on his property.
Yeah.
With a hole in it.
At the beginning, with a hole in it. And so
he was unalive.
Walk us to who found the body and how it happened after he fired the warning shots, right?
Absolutely. Okay. So let's start with the last part first. Okay. Right. Who found the body? How did that happen?
Yes.
Right. So after they're out there for an hour looking for the body. They don't see a body. I'm sorry.
Right?
No, they weren't looking for anybody.
Just kind of looking for people who might have shot.
They're looking for people. They're looking for backpacks. They're looking for they're looking for any evidence of the trespassing. Right. Okay. And of course, they want to make sure Mr. and Mrs. Kelly.
At this point, they're just going on. There was some gunshots. That's it.
And they're responding. And I don't have a problem with any of this. Sure. We would all do this if we were officers.
And then they left.
And then they left. So they said, okay, you guys are cool. We don't find anybody. We're out of here. the directions from both CBP and the sheriff's office was, if you see anything more again, you find anything, give us a call.
This is at 2:30, 3 o'clock?
Yeah, by the time they left now, it was 3:30.
3:30, okay. And then what happened after that?
5:30, as is his manner, first he takes a nap, right? He finishes lunch, he takes a nap like old people do.
Took a nap.
Right?
Took a nap.
I've been there.
No,
We're all there.
and this is important. This is important because he took a nap, right? Who takes a nap that's concerned about something?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
If I got somebody in my property, I'm not going to go take a nap.
Yeah. Well, you know,
Maybe John would. John's cool like that. I'm not
but you know,
really
and here's what all the CBP people said, and the sheriff's office that were there. They all said uniformly, when they found him, he was calm, he was friendly, he was engaging, he invited them onto their property.
2:30 when they okay.
He was all of these different things. He, hey, listen, you shoot somebody, you kill them, I think you're going to be a little bit nervous.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You're not going to invite the
unless
you're
you're
not,
John Tipton,
you're not going to invite the popo onto your property.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Here's the other thing. The guy's a rancher. He's got a backhoe, like a lot of ranchers do. He's got a 180-acre ranch. He's out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. If he did kill one person, or more than one person, you know what? That guy's buried.
Right. So he takes a nap and then
Wakes up
at 5:30.
5:30. Going to go put the horse from the paddock. Gonna water and feed the horse.
Okay.
So he goes out with his dogs. At that time he had 2 dogs. And
Right.
they're Labradors, so they're hunting. They're always chasing stuff. They're looking around. He walks out into the beginning of the paddock, which would be south. Okay, and he's got to move in an easterly direction to get the horse. Okay, he's kind of making like a U-turn. All right, and all of a sudden his dogs get on a scent and they leave him, which they never do. So he's calling them back. They're not coming back. Then he sees them walking around in a circle in this one area, and this is twilight now, because don't forget we're in winter time. January 30th. And he walks up to where the dogs are, and he sees a lone male body on the ground. Dressed in camouflage clothing, tactical boots, got 2 backpacks on him. And Alan doesn't see this at first, but later it is determined that there is a single through and through gunshot wound.
So Alan didn't go check the body. He just saw a person there.
He physically checks the body to make sure that the person's deceased.
Right.
He stays around next to his dogs for about 3 minutes. Then he goes back into the house and calls immediately. Calls CBP, calls the sheriff's office, and he's pretty excited now.
Sure.
And you can hear that. You can hear that in his voice. And you can see the transcripts.
And Doc, one question, sorry to interrupt you. Where he found the body, had the Border Patrol and Sheriff been in that area earlier?
Well, we believe so. I mean, how could you not?
They just missed the body.
When you get out there, and by the way, thank God the jury was out there. Right. And I think that was huge determination that he didn't do it. Once you get out there, in your mind he did not do this, because it just didn't reconcile with anything.
Sure. So far it didn't make sense. So
but when they got up there and they testified, meaning CBP and Sheriff's Office, they were saying, well, I don't know if we went in this exact location. Alan said, yep, you were there. Wanda said, yep, you were there. You were all over this area. Anyway,
and
so
it's tricky.
Right.
It's tricky.
Yeah, who do you believe, right? But getting back to what happened to him, I kid you not, within 30 minutes of the sheriff's office getting out there, because now the sheriff's office is taking over, right? He's in handcuffs. He's under arrest. He's in handcuffs. Okay? Within 45 minutes, less than 45 minutes, his wife is detained. His wife is escorted. Come with me. That's an escort, right? That's a detention. You have to remember that.
Right.
There's 3 law enforcement contacts. There's a consensual encounter where we say, pretty please, may I, that kind of thing. Would you cooperate? Would you do this? And then there's a detention or an arrest where they say, you do this, you do that. It was absolutely, you do this. You come with me. They put her in a patrol car, get in the patrol car. They put her in they didn't put her in the front seat, in the front passenger seat. They put her in a locked rear prisoner compartment, and she was there. She testifies for well over an hour. Then, against her will, they transported her down to the sheriff's office at CID, the Criminal Investigations Division. He is also transported down. Here's what's really important, because we talk about the theme of reconciliation and not doing it. Both people were 100% cooperative. Okay? They're both nervous. You can understand that, finding a dead body on your property. Okay? Especially something where they're telling him, hey, this is a gunshot. Okay?
Right.
And they had a cooperative individual, a cooperative reporting party. They never once did what we call a walkthrough. Okay? And that is who, what, where, why, and how. Hey, Alan, can you tell us, when you went outside, can you show us how you went outside? Can you show us where you were standing? Can you show us where you fired your rifle? Can you show us the direction and the elevation of where you fired your rifle?
It's not like this guy's likely to abscond. He lives there.
No, he lives there, and he's 100% cooperative. Through this entire trial, all of the law enforcement people that had contact with him, the CBP people, said they were the nice, engaging, cooperative. They had a good relationship with him and his wife. No problems from this man.
Okay. So then
He's downtown.
And they finally they kept him, right? And they let his
Well,
wife-
they kept his wife too, right?
So we've got 45 minutes on the crime scene, and they're both arrested. Do we know what the impetus was? What was it that met? What met the definition of a crime and pointed the finger at the suspect?
Did they find
Just
the
a body
shells?
with a hole doesn't mean that he did it.
But they found the shells, right? That he
Not that
he
day.
had fired.
They found one shell. They brought in a dog, explosive dog, right? And the dog finds one shell. By the way, guys, all the shells are in plain view.
Right.
They're all in
I
plain
believe
view.
they landed in a way where that shows that he was shooting in a certain direction.
Well, no, they
Is that
no,
too-
no,
No?
no. They
I
never
thought that was-
established it. So let me clear up a couple of things.
Bolt action rifle. That's hard to do.
Alan was arrested. So let me clear up a couple of things.
Right.
Alan was arrested, handcuffed in the car. She was detained. We believe because there was both a movement from the house to a movement to the car to the movement to the CID. That's what we refer to as a de facto arrest. But don't forget, a de facto arrest, you got to have probable cause. A detention, you got to have reasonable suspicion. They had
I'm
nothing.
still trying to figure that part out.
They had absolutely nothing.
Okay.
But let's move on, because there's another question you threw out on the table. Why did they arrest him?
Right. Where's the evidence?
Here's what you got. Here's the only thing they had. They had a body on the ground, single gunshot wound. They had Alan and Wanda calling up saying shots were fired. And that's all they had. They didn't have any other evidence at that time. No other evidence. In science, there is a Latin saying, it's called ergo hoc, ergo propter hoc. And what it means is just because A happened and B happened doesn't mean that A caused B to happen.
Right.
But if you don't have any experience, right, these are very inexperienced people. We're talking Santa Cruz County, very inexperienced people. There's 3 levels of knowledge, guys. Level 1, I know what I don't know. Right, I know what I know.
Right.
Number 2, I know what I don't know. Both of those are healthy. The worst one to have, I don't even know what I don't know.
Right.
Okay, and that's these guys.
Right.
So they had what they needed with the confirmation bias. Okay, they had an admission of shots fired. They had a dead body, and they had Alan.
Was there not a conversation between the arresting officer or supervisor with the DA or the ADA, somebody to say, "Yep, sounds like you meets the elements of the crime. Go ahead and bring him on
They
in."
just took him in.
No,
Without any of that. So
no. Well, wait a minute. There's a yes and a no to that, because you asked 2 questions actually.
Sorry.
Okay, no, it's okay. Question number 1: Did the detective who arrested him at the scene talk with the supervisor? Yes. Did the supervisor say hook him up? Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. Next one. Did they have an ADA come out there, an assistant district attorney? Did they have the ME come out there? Did they have anybody to give them more to complete the elements of an arrest? No. They did not. As a matter of fact, the lead detective who arrested him downtown for first-degree murder had not even been out to the crime scene.
I mean, at this
Then he
point-
didn't know anything.
And he
completely
hasn't
blind.
admitted to anything, so there's no confession that he's done anything wrong.
No.
He's the only suspect in 100 and some odd acres, I guess, in their eyes.
Yeah, and by the way, here's another thing that's just so important.
Where a lot of people traverse through that land.
Alan told CBP, and he told Detective Ainza, the lead detective, during the interview. And by the way, everybody got to watch the interview. Everybody got to read the transcript, and Ainza testified. Everything. Alan Kelly suggested to them, because he heard the single gunshot, and the guy had one bullet hole in him. He suggested, because there were two groups, right? Not just they saw more than one. Alan suggested that this man, his name was Gabriel Boutamia.
Yes, we have a photo of him.
That he was shot and robbed by a RIP crew,
Which happens a lot on the
which happens on the border a lot. And so just for your viewers and listeners, a RIP crew are rogue banditos. Okay, so they're not cartel.
Right.
They are rogue
down the
banditos,
border.
but they rob the cartel drug smugglers and human traffickers, and they rob and rape migrants. They commit lots of crimes. They murder a lot of people.
Typically, I've seen it when I was a border patrol. They won't report it after it's happened.
Exactly.
Because they fear like, well, I'm going to get arrested, so I'm just going to move on.
And Alan suggested to both those agencies, and in his interview specifically, that in his mind this was a definite possibility. Ainza and Sheriff Hathaway and the detectives completely discounted all of that. They never for 1 minute, and they testified to this, they never for 1 minute believed him or looked into his suggestion whatsoever. Alan said on 13 different occasions that he never shot at anybody. He never shot anybody. He even stood up during his interview and demonstrated how he had pointed his weapon high up into the air. He said he pointed it high up into the air. And all of that was discounted. And after a 40-minute interview, Detective Ainza placed him under arrest for first-degree homicide. Don't forget, first-degree homicide is special circumstances, lying in wait.
They could have done an investigation and come arrest him later.
That would have been the very prudent, inexpensive, just all around.
Do some
He's
investigation.
not going anywhere. 77.
So thank you. Where is the exigency to arrest anybody?
That's the point.
Where is the exigency to arrest anybody? He's 70-something years old. He's not going anywhere.
He didn't call an attorney right away.
No, I think that was a huge mistake.
Right. The attorney wouldn't have let that.
Right. And, but let me also clear up something that's important. And this is not your fault. When you first began, you said he testified. Alan Kelly gave interviews to law enforcement. Obviously, they were videotaped interviews, but he never testified in court.
Gotcha.
And that became part of the defense strategy because we didn't feel that he had to testify. In his video interview, which was lengthy, he told the detectives everything that he would have told the jury.
There were no unanswered questions.
No, we're none.
Yeah.
There were none.
So then now, as we mentioned earlier, John, the gentleman is waiting for Monday for the prosecutor to decide if they're going to retry this case, even though 7 jurors kind of voted to acquit him, right? And one holdout. I wonder what's going to happen. And and Dr. Martinelli mentioned that the DA and the sheriff are both up for re-election. This is a very blue, I guess, district, and the sheriff, when you interview him when you see his videos, he does speak like he's very soft on crime. He even called the Border Patrol Gestapo in one interview. That was unbelievable. So it kind of leaves me to question, is this guy trying to make a name for himself? And I even heard the sheriff mention in an interview on YouTube that there's people that go out there, vigilantes, and they try to shoot Mexicans. So he has this mindset. It seems like this is happening. And it seems like he jumped to conclusions.
Yeah, there's so many moving parts here. I want to talk about the sheriff and his very inappropriate statements in a minute, but I just want to make sure that the public understands a few of the forensic facts here.
Okay.
Okay, number one, the state brought in 2 ballistic experts.
Thank you. I was right.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
So 2 independent ballistic experts. Okay, one from Texas and one from Seattle.
No,
who used to work. Very nice man. Used to work for the Texas Ranger Lab in Waco. Okay, very, very well qualified
No
guy.
bullet was found. Yeah.
Here's what we're really important.
Right.
Through and through round. Lower right, transverse out the left side of the chest.
From the sky.
How did that happen?
Right.
Right? Okay, so
I'd love to. Ron, I need to see the reenactments. I need to see.
you know what? I got to tell you something. They never did any of that.
No.
Wow. Here they never. This is important that people understand this. By the way, this is not the way Martinelli and Associates operates.
Sure.
But I want to tell you what the ballistic people testified to. Right. Number one, they couldn't establish what kind of weapon shot Gabriel Budimia. They couldn't tell. They couldn't testify conclusively whether it was a rifle, whether it was a high-powered pistol. That's number two.
What range?
They couldn't testify to range other than it was fired beyond 6 feet. Okay. They couldn't testify to Alan Kelly's position when he fired, the direction that he fired, or the elevation that he fired. One of their experts said that he guessed where Alan was standing based on where they found spent casings. He guessed, but no, there's more to it. There's so much more. Neither one of them took his rifle out and
No test fire.
they test fired it. They just didn't attempt to recreate directionality or elevation. And so this is a Jeopardy quiz question here. Now don't forget, the ultimate people that supervise over the investigation are the prosecutors. And here's something that you and I know, Robert, being in law enforcement, that I'll bet you most of the public doesn't know. Those prosecutors are Leos. They carry badges. They are law enforcement officers. So you're the law enforcement officer. You are the supervisor, the ultimate legal supervisor of this case. You bring in your own ballistic experts and you do not task them to try to recreate what happened.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
I don't think they thought this case was going to go get this kind of attention, national attention. I think.
Yeah, but it goes beyond that. Let me say something else. The pathologist, who was very, very, very qualified, female doctor, very qualified. And of course, we have our own pathologist. I'm a certified medical investigator at the physician's level, direct our medical team. I wrote a lot of her questions. Okay, and our pathologist wrote a lot of her questions. She was not even able to establish that Gabriel Budimia was shot where he had been found.
Wow.
She testified, and the autopsy report documents single gunshot wound, exoneration, which means you bleed out.
Right. Yeah.
And so we presented her with some hypotheticals that I designed called speed, distance, and bleed outs. And so how much, here's some cool
What's
stuff.
the average capacity?
Yeah, okay.
of the body?
Here's some cool stuff.
I know
Okay.
it's kind of morbid, but yeah.
Let me get into the
Take it
Dr.
right now.
Martinelli mode for a minute, okay? So the body has somewhere between 6 and 8 quarts of blood, pint of blood in it. And it takes the body with a single gunshot wound of that nature, anywhere from 3.5 minutes to 5 minutes to bleed out.
Exactly.
So the question you want to ask yourself is if you get hit and you didn't DRT, dead right there, right, which she said she couldn't say that happened at all, how far can you move at half a mile an hour, at a mile an hour, going all the way up to 3 miles an hour, which is a slow gait.
Right.
Walking gait's about 3.5 miles an hour. Right. She testified, based on our hypothetical, that he could have been hundreds of yards away. He could have been shot hundreds of yards away. And then he could have walked, run, and or staggered and then bled out and collapsed where he was found.
Right. If there would have been a trail of blood, you would have thought.
Not necessarily. And let me tell you why. Because
It
if
was
you,
internal cavity.
and we're going to show, I think we're going to show a picture
Yes,
of exactly how he was dressed. So don't forget, he had two backpacks. He had one on the front,
Binoculars.
okay, and he had one on the back, and then he had a shirt, a sweatshirt, and a jacket. Don't forget that all of that stuff pushes against the wound
So, yeah.
and compresses that wound. And by the way, she testified that he had a lot of blood inside of him.
Mm.
Had a lot of blood inside of him. And so don't forget that all of that clothing in the backpacks or the front packs are obstructing the bleed. So don't,
That's your answer.
so
I'm
there
just
you go.
Trying to go through my head. You have an entry wound and an exit wound.
Well, the entry wound is the lower right,
Okay.
and it went from low to high, from right to left, and exited out the front.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here,
Good.
ballistically,
Nail and artery.
but John, yes, it did. But John, when they did their kind of like reenactment, I won't call it a reenactment. They just said, well, if he was standing here and he fired directly to where the body was found 90 degrees from the house, so just exactly due east.
Mhm.
And so they said, he fired straight across. Well, if you fired straight across, then, and if he was in the right side, why isn't it going like that?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Why is it going below and going up? Right? Why is that? Okay. Now, if you want to hear what the detectives had to say, and this is just amazing, that one or two detectives said, well, we knew he shot him because the head of the body was facing towards the house.
Well, sorry.
And that's their ballistic expertise.
Just absolutely incredulous.
Oh, there's so much more though.
And then one question, I don't know if this came up or not, Ron. And by the way, just thank you, Ron, for introducing me to this case, because I was also interviewed as a potential expert witness.
Absolutely, and I tell you, my idea to bring you in,
Sure.
because we really needed to have a border expert
Mhm.
come in, because part of our theory is Gabriel Budimia was not a innocent. Here's the false narrative we believe put out by the prosecution. He's an innocent migrant seeking the American dream. Okay, what migrant is dressed in tactical boots, in tactical pants, got an encrypted, sophisticated, expensive two-way radio,
Binoculars, gloves.
and they didn't find the binoculars that day, but he had gloves. But they downloaded his phone at our request, and we found the picture that we're going to show. And who does that?
Right.
Who carries that kind of equipment?
I feel the only
Right.
Why don't you go ahead and describe it, and then this is where I'll insert it. So if you talk about it now, I'll make sure I marry the picture.
Yeah, great. So the CBP people even had to concede that the way that Gabriel Budimia was attired and accessorized, minus the binoculars, but even in the picture,
classic guide or smuggler.
Classic guide or smuggler, a scout or a smuggler,
yeah.
right? And of course, the sheriffs, they were saying, "Oh no, just a
migrant that was coming across to better his life." Yeah.
Here's something that's very, very interesting. So it looked to us from their crime scene photos that he had been robbed, that there was evidence that he had been possibly dragged to that position and robbed, because the backpack was pulled all the way, not all the way, but a lot of it was over the top of his head. Okay,
As if somebody was
and
dragging
the
him
strap
around.
was, and
There dirt in his
one
pockets, too.
of the strap was broken. When I looked at the evidence. It was in the evidence room, and I took pictures of this. When I saw his tactical pants, one of the zippers on the upper right side of his tactical pants was broken. And when I looked inside with my phone light and just using a pen to kind of open it up, I found debris in there. I found dirt in there, and I found broken grass in there.
Somebody had drugged that.
Somebody had dragged him. The other thing, here's the story from there. I got to talk about the witnesses, because it just, you're going to shake your head. They're so-called witnesses. But anyway, the one so-called witness who actually testified, they called him DRR. His name was Daniel. His first name because we found out what his real name was. His first name was Daniel Ruiz Rodriguez. They called him DRR in the preliminary and throughout the investigation until we got him identified. But anyway, he testified that, Gabriel and I were just searching for the American dream. We were going to Phoenix. We had a roof job. We were going to be here for several days do the roof job. Who comes into the United States and doesn't have one single United States dollar on him? Okay. When they looked through the backpack, and I counted the money myself, he had 1,540 pesos. Okay. So you're going to be in the United States for several days. You're going to need water. You're going to need food. You're going to need, right? You're going to need all of these things. You're going to need to get from point A to point B, right? Maybe you're going to need to stay in a hotel. You're going to, a motel, wherever, because you didn't bring a tent with you. Okay, where did all of that money go? Where is it? And the backpack was definitely opened and half of the contents were gone, right? To us, and of course, our people testified through them. Actually, our people didn't testify. We got them to testify, agreeing to the hypothetical that he could have been robbed. We did that with Border Patrol, but the sheriff's office consistently said they saw no evidence of robbery at all because it didn't fit their false narrative.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's just too much circumstantial evidence, too much missing parts. I mean, this is not a case that needed to be prosecuted, in my opinion, or it needed to be investigated better, closer, John. I think hopefully this will get resolved. And I know, before we close, Dr. Martinelli, I know that you did this pro bono. And this is an expensive investigation or forensics. You did this pro bono, right?
Yeah, but also yes. The answer is yes. But let me tell you that when we do the media stuff and everything, I'm like the tip of the spear.
Yes.
Right. But the tip of the spear is useless without the shaft of the spear. And so I am so honored. I stand on the shoulders of great forensic experts that just kind of make me look good.
Sure.
Okay. But these men and women in our staff donated thousands of free hours to the Kelly pro bono. That's what it means.
Oh, I'm very aware of how.
And so the question is, what kind of regular person is going to be able to afford, an entire staff of forensic experts donating thousands of hours?
It's still the legal fees have depleted their funds.
Yes.
And now, so I want to make sure I get this in the podcast before we close, Doc. There is a fund to legal defense fund for them, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's called, I want to get this right, Give, Send, Go.
Right.
GIVESENDGO.com. And I've never used it. I've never even been on it.
Right.
But I understand that there are different accounts that you can put the money into.
Okay.
The account for this is going to be the George Allen Kelly account.
Okay.
And I really,
I'll try to go get a screenshot of that.
I would really encourage your viewers and listeners, after hearing this and these terrible things that happened to George and Wanda Kelly, senior citizens, for God's sakes, who've depleted their entire account, could you please think about donating some money to GiveSendGo.com, George Allen, ALAN Kelly. And of course, we would really appreciate your prayers and support coming towards Monday.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martinelli. John, what an interesting case, no?
I've still got 100 questions.
Well, I'm sure. And but this is, I think, for our viewers, what's scary is this could happen to you. This could happen to anyone. If you need to call a lawyer. Especially if you have a sheriff that appears to be overzealous and a crew that doesn't seem to be well trained. It's scary.
Well, it's extremely scary, and I think another guest that we have on regularly, Dave Parent, from a legal perspective, has said on multiple occasions that for whatever reason you don't want to get involved in our legal or judicial system. Period.
Right.
If you can avoid it, don't get involved.
We need to get David on this case.
Yeah, you know what we see now? I see this increasingly, and by the way, I know Dave Parent and he's following this case pretty closely. So it'd be great to have him on someday for I'd like to watch his opinions.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what we're seeing. We're starting to see something I refer to now as prosecutorial advocacy and activism. And they don't vet their cases properly. They have their truth instead of the truth, and then they double down on it.
Trust me, my family's been a victim of that.
And they are activists when they need to just be, it's a search for the truth.
Exactly.
Okay, and it's not your truth, it's the truth.
Right. And you call it, here in Kendall County, I think you call it selective, what does it get? Prosecution? Selective enforcement.
Selective enforcement.
Yeah, because we've seen cases like that. My family's experienced that where, the sheriff doesn't like you, and so, they're going to go in there with a biased view.
And then there's
and
there's prosecutorial discretion too.
And Robert, when we were off camera earlier, we were kind of talking about this, and you made the right comment. And this goes out to the people in Santa Cruz County. This is not a blue thing or a red thing. This is not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. It is about justice, a sense of justice, a credible criminal justice system, a credible legal system, a credible law enforcement system that we can count on to protect all of our rights. And so please don't, elections have consequences. Sure. And I'm hoping, and praying that Mr. and Mrs. Kelly will be freed from their burden. And I'm hoping that not just only in Santa Cruz County, but across this country, you vet these candidates that have control over your civil rights and your security. Don't vote red, don't vote blue. Find out who is best qualified, best trained, best skilled to protect your civil rights. Because whatever happened, these tragic consequences to the Kelly, like Robert and John said, it could happen to you, and just as quickly. And we can't have that in the United States of America. We are too good for that.
Thank you, Dr. Martinelli. Well said.
Well said.
And I've always said this, John. I don't know why we elect sheriffs. I like the chief of police. He's appointed because and a sheriff needs to be objective and not just abide by his party loyalty, and that concerns me. I'm always concerned with sheriffs, and then I hear people saying we need to give sheriffs more power, and I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. We need objective, nonpartisan law enforcement officers, like Dr. Martinelli says. Don't vote party when you're voting for a sheriff. Vote for the person who's best qualified, who you think is going to protect your civil rights and treat everybody equally. And I think
I pray for that every single night when I go to bed, that people will do that and take the time. But they're so busy.
Yes.
Society and the powers that be have made it to where it's impossible for the nuclear family to sit down and educate themselves on what's going on in the country like we used to be able to do.
Right.
And so they rely on sources that may not have properly vetted the information, or they have an axe to grind. And I'm not going to mention any BAIC names or anything like that. But
I got you.
But seriously, we've got to have and retain the ability, or let me rephrase that, recapture our ability to have open and honest dialogue and discussions.
Right.
And now we have this elderly couple that have lost, for all intents and purposes, they have lost everything. And they probably, without our watchers, our viewers, help and assistance by sharing this far and wide, let's fill those coffers and not burden this couple.
And not to mention, John, can you imagine them going back to their property with all this publicity now?
My heart's broken that they're spending the rest of their lives wondering how they're going to pay for this.
Well, they're going to be in fear. Like, everybody knows about them now, and so that's scary. But anyway, hopefully the prayers will be answered. And again, thanks to people like Dr. Ron Martinelli that are helping balance the scales out there. So we appreciate you very much, Doc. Thank you for taking all this time to be with us today. And we look forward to some more follow-up on this.
We'll start providing some of the. Yes. We'll provide information as we get more updates, and as long as you're subscribed, you've commented, you're magically going to get notified when that comes available.
Absolutely. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention, your time. Thank you, John Tipton, for being a great co-host.
Same to you, Robert.
I'm Robert Sines. This is the Texas Examiner.
Thanks, folks. Y'all have a great day.